Okay, I think I did it. Excellent. Yes. Okay. Sorry about that.
I am now muted.
Is my other mic working then? And I just am a dum-dum? I'm glad it's going to caption that I said I'm a dum-dum.
They are star.
Okay, we'll use the mic on the computer as long as it sounds okay. My fancy mic is misbehaving. That's what I get for trying to be fancy. Let me just fix the captions a little bit here. Okay, I think I'm ready to get started for real now. We're only a couple minutes behind.
Yeah, compared to other things, this is pretty timely.
Okay, perfect. My capture is good. My mic is working. I totally have a slideshow ready, and I made a extra PDF that I will be posting, you know, during the like little break we take. That has more flowchart practice, because I know that is something that people ask for constantly if they can have more flowchart practice. So I am going to definitely be posting that for you guys during a little break between preparing written material and the flowcharts section today. I did have a couple of things I wanted to go over before we get started. I'm going to open my presentation here. One of the things I wanted to talk about is just the disclaimer about that, you know, that's on the NYS ITS site, but I just wanted to make sure that it's captured here as well. I forgot to say it last time. This is not official OITS. This is not run by PEF or Civil Service or anyone else. It's just me. And that when you post in the chat or on the site, you are not allowed to post any material from previous exams, anything from anybody who may have helped write the questions, or any copyrighted material unless you have special permission from the owner. We frequently run into people asking about the CSEA booklets. And if you're trying to get a hold of CSEA booklets, I would much prefer if you take that offline somewhere else, because there is currently no legitimate way for PAF members or non-CSEA members to get access to those booklets unless you had them from before. So that is the little disclaimer section. Something that somebody asked me about in email over the last couple of weeks was the pass books that are written by National Learning Corporation. And those are the ones that had the old ones had the green and yellow cover, and there's a newer set that have a blue and white cover. Those pass books that you can find online, especially the old green and yellow one, is probably not relevant because it's based on the old exam format where there was a lot of detail about database questions and networking and all sorts of things. So the old green and yellow one, some of it might be good. The systems analysis stuff is probably still pretty relevant. But the newer blue and white one, I haven't seen that one yet or assessed it. It also probably contains too much information. Those pass books are prepared and published well in advance of the exam announcement, which means that they have to be very general and they contain too much rather than specifically targeting to your specific test. So remember, you only have 4 topics on your exam, and that's the systems analysis that we went over 2 weeks ago. Today we're doing the preparing written material and flowcharts, and then next week we're going to go over the reading a manual, I think, procedural manual, something like that. And those are the only 4 topics on your exam. So just make sure that if you do get the National Learning Corporation Passbook, that you are sure that you don't have to study all the details about database administration or networking or anything like that, because it's not on your exam. So that was the only other thing I wanted to say about general housekeeping sort of stuff. The format for today is going to be preparing written material first, and then flowcharts second, with some time for Q&A later on at the end if we want. But the preparing written material section takes usually up to an hour to go through. The logical reasoning using flowchart section, again, we'll do about up to an hour, so we'll probably go just about until 4 today. And the slides that I'm using will be up on the site. I will also link them in the description after we do it, just in case there's anything I need to change. These slides are very similar to the slides from previous years, but I did update them, and especially there's some new sample questions that I found, which I think you guys are really going to like. So let's get that started. Do that. And then I have to switch. This to... Oh, that is much too big. Oh, and I would also like to call out thank you to everybody who was able to send over a couple of bucks last time. We made the goal, so I'm sure other Sarah is happy that I can pay her for her time as a moderator. And she's in the chat as well, and she'll be calling things out to me as I need. So it's not me being a second person in the chat. There is another Sarah. It takes a lot of my focus and concentration to just deliver the content here. There is still a Ko-fi or coffee link in the description, and I have a goal up to try to get some editing help to publish some nicer videos to the site for everyone. Okay, let's transition this.
What time for next Saturday?
Next Saturday, same bat time, same bat channel, 2 p.m. Mother flipping.
Oh!
Okay, I fixed it. My good mic not working has really screwed up my flow here. This is what I get for trying to make you guys new questions. I was running behind. And I didn't get to get my microphone set up properly. Okay. Thank you all for bearing with me through these audio issues.
And where will the slides be when you are done?
When I'm done, I'm going to post the slides to the nysits.org site, but I will also post the link in the description of this video. So you'll get a push from, if you're subscribed to the notifications on the NYSITS site, nysits.org, you will get the post notification when I put up the slides. And if you come back to this video, once it's in replay mode, I will put a link to the slides and the handout and the answers. It'll all be together for you. So we already did the agenda, so let's just go right into preparing written material. I feel like I need 2 more monitors right now. It's okay. I'll just move things around a little. So preparing written material. These questions, this is the official civil service description of this category. These questions test for the ability to present information clearly and accurately, and to organize paragraphs logically and comprehensively. For some questions, you'll be given information in 2 or 3 sentences, followed by 4 restatements of the information, and you must then choose the best version. For other questions, you're given paragraphs with their sentences out of order, and you must then choose from the 4 suggestions the best order for the sentences. We're going to go over each one of those types of questions, and we're starting with the information presentation, which is choosing the best restatement of the presented information. So our strategy as we look at this is going to be to underline or circle mistakes that you find, cross out choices that have any factual mistakes, because if there are factual mistakes, that cannot be the right answer. Eliminate choices with awful grammatical mistakes, and then choose the best remaining one. So sometimes they all kind of suck a little bit, but we choose the least bad one out of the ones that are available. Mistakes to look for, again, factual mistakes, grammatical mistakes, and then as far as style goes, some style things to look for are redundancy and awkwardness. So factual mistakes are stating things that aren't in the original or not stating things that are in the original. If there are important facts in the original one that are left out, that's also a factual mistake. It would also be if the restatement is the same category of word but has a different meaning. If I said something like, you will go to the store, and the restatement said, you may go to the store, those are very similar ideas, but very different meanings. So be careful of words like that, and be careful of words like some versus all. For grammatical mistakes, I'm only going to point out a couple things. The biggest ones that are going to cause difficulty understanding what's going on in the restatement would be pronoun confusion and then misplaced modifiers, and I'm going to go over both of those right now. So pronoun confusion, there's an example here where it says, I'll position the target, and when I nod my head, shoot at it. And this is pronoun confusion because the it at the end could refer to the target or to your head, and it's a little ambiguous as to which one you want to be shot at. Hopefully the target. So when you're doing pronouns, the agreement is with whatever you're referring to. So if you want to agree in number, you would take a sentence like this example here where it says everybody should do their work on time. And you would look at it and you would say, okay, everybody is a singular word and there was plural. So we need to replace that with singular. So everybody should do his or her work on time. Agreement in person means first person, second person, third person. So first person is when you talk about I or me. Second person is when you talk about you. And third person is when you're talking about somebody else entirely. So if I say when a student is late, you should apologize. The a student part is in third person, but the you is in second person. So we should say when a student is late, he should apologize or she should apologize. So that is the agreement in person part of this. You don't really need to know that it's called first person, second person, third person. You just need to make sure, again, that the pronoun part, the you, he, she, they, it, whatever the pronoun is, matches what it's referring to. And then the third thing to look for is ambiguity or confusion. That's like the example we just had with the target and whether you're shooting at the head or the target. So Fred visited Bob after his graduation. The sentence isn't clear as to which one graduated. And if I just change it to Fred's graduation, now it's clear, we know what's going on. So these would be pronoun confusions that you should look out for because they affect the meanings of the sentence. Misplaced modifiers also cause confusion and they affect the meaning of the sentence. So for a couple examples, a modifier is just a little phrase or an adjective or an adverb that should probably go next to the thing it's trying to modify. So in this first example, the pencil fell out of the student's hand with rainbow stripes. It sounds like I'm saying the student's hand has rainbow stripes, when I really meant to say that the pencil has rainbow stripes. So I should probably move that rainbow stripes part next to the pencil. So that's a misplaced modifier. And for the second example here, the proctor handed a test to the student that was 20 pages long. At first glance, it kind of seems okay, because we talk colloquially, like if you're just talking with your friends, you might talk like this, but it's not entirely clear that the 20 pages probably refers to the test and not to the student. So it's a little better to move that was 20 pages long over next to the word test. And the last one is, again, causing a lot of ambiguity. And this one is one that you might see more frequently because it doesn't sound as awkward. The student said the test was tiring on Saturday. And the question ends up being, did they say it was tiring on Saturday or was the test on Saturday? So you could just move the on Saturday to clarify where you meant to modify. Okay, so those are a couple little grammar things, but again, the biggest issue with it is if they're affecting the meaning of the sentences. For redundancy as a style thing, look for every sentence starting with the same word, or if a long string of words appears verbatim in more than one sentence. And then for awkwardness is basically if there are two choices that seem okay, but one seems more clear than the other, you want to choose the clearer one. Because remember, the first thing I read that was the civil service definition of this topic said you're trying to present information clearly and accurately. The accurately part is more important though. So are we ready for some sample questions? Yes. I'm ready. Somebody asked in the chat, isn't singular there a thing? It is pretty recently a thing that singular there exists, but I don't think, is my opinion, that civil service would not kind of force that issue in a question.
Correct.
Yeah, they wouldn't test you on whether they/their is a singular or a plural pronoun, because yes, singular they has become grammatically acceptable to many people very recently. Grammar is a continuum, it's always changing. Singular they used to be very forbidden, but now it is much less forbidden and part of many different style guides. That you are allowed to use singular they. Thank you for the question. All right, first sample question. This is probably one that you've seen before because it came from other videos. It's from CSEA booklet 17, which is preparing written material. And I did get explicit permission from CSEA to use this example. So this is a question about snowboarding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this question up for just a moment, and I actually need to grab some water, but I want you to try to answer this question. I'm going to put up a quick poll, and I want you to choose which answer you like the best, A, B, C, or D. SWER. So the snowboarding question. A, B, C, and option D. There we go. So I'll put up that poll and I will be right back to go over the answer. Okay, I'm back. Let's see what people think in the chat.
I think people still need time. You only have 24 answers out of 127 people viewing. Well, you have to pick them.
I did end the poll just because I was impatient. So if you didn't get a chance to answer the poll, no big deal. But I will give you another moment to look at this question. Sorry guys, I forgot that even if I mute my mic, the captions keep going. I'm a hot mess of a streamer over here. I'm not Twitch ready yet. That's why we're on YouTube. Also, you guys wanted to do YouTube.
Oh, your audio's gone?
It was gone. I was muted. It should be good again though.
They might be lagging.
Oh yeah, people lag. It does. There's a variable lag. So some people are up to 30 seconds behind other people, which makes chat interesting. Thank you, Joel. I appreciate the confirmation that audio is working. Yes, and thank you, Dan, for reminding. I would prefer if you don't type the answers into chat because not everybody works at the same pace. Next time I will leave the poll open longer so that you can choose an answer. That was my bad, ending it so quickly. But next time I will leave the poll open longer and you can answer what you would like. So let me go back to my slide deck so that I can go to the next slide here and show you guys the correct answer. So all of these slides that I'm going to be posting, I have them set up so that they go question and then the next slide has the answer outlined for you. So if you're going through this again later, like you print off the slides or something and you're going through them so that you can kind of not have the answer when you're looking at the question, the slide after it will have the answer on. So just like this, where I put the box around letter C, which is the correct answer. Every sample question that we're doing in the PowerPoint at least has the correct answer boxed at the bottom or on the next slide. Okay, so we've got 3 sentences here about snowboarding. First is that snowboarding has become an increasingly popular alternative to traditional skiing. Second is that from the beginning, snowboarders were perceived as a little wilder or a little more adventurous than skiers. And third is that this image of the snowboarder as a free spirit has made the sport particularly popular among young people. So as you go through, remember the first thing we're looking for are factual mistakes or changes. And we'll start right with letter A and work our way through looking for the factual changes. So A, in recent years, snowboarding has actually become more popular than traditional skiing. That is flat out wrong, right? Number 1 says it's an increasingly popular alternative. There's nothing saying that it's become more popular. So for letter A, we have to cross it out because that one is flat out making up new facts. The fact about snowboarding being an alternative to skiing is an important fact to include though. So for the same kind of reason, just based on fact number 1, we have to cross off letter D because it doesn't say anything about skiing. For letter B, it says snowboarding has become increasingly popular over the years. It doesn't say that it's an alternative to skiing directly, but it does say that it is just an increasingly popular sport. And that's the main idea that we were going for, is that it's becoming more popular. The second sentence about how the second fact, number 2, about how snowboarders were perceived as wilder or more adventurous. That also is good in both B and C. And the third fact, this image of the snowboarder as a free spirit has made the sport particularly popular among young people. So again, we're focusing on that the image part is what makes it popular among young people. And letters B and C also both have that fact correct. But the problem is exactly what Southpaw Hare put in there, that it's very repetitious to just say snowboarding has become increasingly popular over the years. Snowboarding is seen by many as a more adventurous sport than skiing. Snowboarding has become popular for this reason among young people. It just doesn't quite flow as well. But neither one is a perfect answer. And I think that's what I like about this particular sample question, is it kind of highlights that sometimes you will end up with questions where neither one is a perfect answer. And I see a comment in the chat that says they were reluctant to go with C over B because saying carefree seemed like it was adding something. The restatement doesn't need to be exactly the same as the initial sentence. I don't think it's going to be a matter of how far you've drifted. So I don't think it's egregious to say a little wilder, a little more adventurous kind of matches with carefree.
And this is free spirit in the third.
And it does say free spirit in the third. Thanks, Jillian. We also have Jillian here. So if you hear an extra voice, that's Jillian hanging out too. I like to have a real audience too, so that we can study together. All right. I also went onto the CSEA website. Sorry, the CS, Civil Service, not CSEA. The actual New York State Civil Service website, cs.ny.gov. And I went onto that site, and they have some sample questions and test guides that they put together for various exams. Now, they don't have one for this particular exam, and they don't have a lot of guides for every specific topic split out. They're kind of hard to find. So I actually downloaded all the sample test guides and looked at every one of them to see if they had anything about preparing written material in them. And all of them have the same 2 sample questions for preparing written material. So I'm going to go over that sample question for this. There's one for this area, one for the other area. And then I actually found in one of them, in one of the test guides, there was a practice test for the Investigator Non-Police series, which did have some extra preparing written material questions in it that are direct from civil service. So that's awesome for us, because now we know exactly what types of questions they're going to be giving. I will be, again, posting that source material and the which books they came from in the test guides in the civil service site on the NYSITS post when I make it after this. So the first civil service sample question is about Martin Wilson. Martin Wilson failed to take proper precautions. His failure to take proper precautions caused a personal injury accident. Which one of the following best presents the information above? And again, I'll put up a poll for us. And then you can answer the poll, and we'll go over it. Somebody asked about the CSEA website to see the material. I misspoke. It's the CS website, Civil Service website, not CSEA website. There is no CSEA website that is accessible to non-CSEA members. All right, I see that we have over 50 votes, so I'm going to end the poll now. I know not everybody's on a device where they can even answer these polls. So the correct answer to our Martin Wilson question here is letter C, just like the previous one. So the real critical thing here is making sure that you get your cause and effect correct and that you're not attributing a cause to something that's not in here. So for letter A, Martin Wilson failed to take proper precautions that caused a personal injury accident. If you remember the misplaced modifier slide that I just went over with you, you can see the part where it says that caused a personal injury accident should be not next to precautions, because when you leave it next to precautions, it looks like the precautions caused the accident, right? When it was really his failure that caused the accident. So for letter B, proper precautions, which Martin Wilson failed to take, caused a personal injury accident. That one actually says outright that the precautions are what caused the accident, not that his failure caused the accident. Letter C says correctly that his failure to take the precautions caused a personal injury accident. So we have another noun to kind of hook on to. That failure is very important. In letter D, Mr. Wilson, who failed to take proper precautions, was in a personal injury accident. Now, it doesn't actually say anywhere that Martin was the one in the accident. It just says that he caused it. But it also doesn't say that he's the one who caused the accident in letter D. So letter D can't be correct either. Letter C is the best answer to this question. All right, sample question 2. Senator Martinez met with the county legislature. Then Senator Martinez announced that the meal subsidy program would start in June. Once we get past 50 votes, I'll close the poll. There we go, 50 votes. I agree with Dan on the chat. This one is tougher, and your poll results show that people had a little bit of a tougher time with this one. So in this one, what we want to be careful of is kind of the timeline of events and what you're implying by the restatement that you're saying. So the correct answer to this question is letter A, which was the most popular poll answer. So good work, wisdom of the crowds. After meeting with the county legislature, Senator Martinez announced that the meal subsidy program would start in June. So when I look at this, I see a couple of different things that I want to make sure I get in the restatement. One is that the meeting was with the county legislature. And the second is that the announcement that happened may or may not have been with the county legislature. We don't know who it was with, but that the announcement was afterwards. And we want to make sure that the program is what's going to start in June. So looking at those kind of three main things, do all of these say that Senator Martinez met with the county legislature? Yes. Letter B says that, letter C says that, and letter D says that. So the county legislature part seems like it's probably not the issue. The meal subsidy program starting in June appears to be pretty much the same in all these sentences as well. So after meeting with the legislature, Senator Martinez announced the meal subsidy program would start in June. Letter B, Senator Martinez met and announced that the program would start in June. Letter C, announced that the program would start in June. And letter D, Senator Martinez, who did that thing, announced the program would start in June. So all of those things say the program would start in June. Letter C, sorry, let me start with letter D. Letter D doesn't say anything about the timeline of events. Right? It doesn't say whether the announcement was before or after the meeting. So that is missing a fact about when things happened. Letter B is also missing that kind of sequence of events where it tells that she met and then announced, right? Letter B makes it kind of sound like she announced it at the meeting. For letter C versus letter A, that's another example of the misplaced modifier. So when you announce that the meal subsidy program for letter C would start in June after a meeting with the county legislature, it makes it sound like the program's going to start after the meeting, not that the announcement happened after the meeting. So that's, again, an example of the misplaced modifier. Okay. We have a third question in this type, and then we're going to go to the other type of questions, which is the ones where you have to put sentences in order.
And when you are done with the questions, can you reiterate where this is available?
I'm going to be posting it in the description later.
Right, someone's asking, but just reiterate it when you're done.
I think you already selected the answer.
Oh no! Oh, Jillian just pointed out that I accidentally clicked too many times. We'll pretend that you didn't see it, and we'll go back.
So.
Oh no, I made the slide wrong.
So everybody gets it correct.
Yay!
Best teacher
free
ever.
Answer choice. Well, let's go over it anyway.
Ask them if they can explain why B is the best answer.
That would be good. Yes. I apologize, guys. I was making these slides pretty late last night, and there's complicated ones coming up that I think I got all the transitions right on. If anyone wants to try explaining in the chat why B is the best answer, that would be appropriate and wonderful. So we have Frank Colomb wrote the press release. He sent 3 copies to the director. The director then gave one of the copies to the commissioner. I like that other Sarah's got my back here, pretending it was on purpose.
Yep. If I were, like as a teacher, it's what you do.
Great
Excellent
point out, and Joel. That's you found an ambiguous pronoun. You don't know who he is referring to in letter A. Frank sent to the director 3 copies of a press release he had written. We don't know whether it's Frank or the director. That's a great reason why letter A is not the correct answer. Why is letter C not the correct answer? Thanks, Danielle. Letter C, we don't know who the him is. There's another ambiguous pronoun. I would say letter C is also super awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, the reason why it feels so awkward is because you're mixing tenses in that sentence. Because if I say he gave, it's actually active and passive mixing, but he gave the commissioner one of the 3 copies and then had been sent. Those are 2 different ways to express something that happened in the past. One is very direct, gave, and the other one is had been sent. And that's why the had been sent sounds so weird. Again, you don't need to know all the grammar nitpickies, but sometimes it helps people to understand why it sounds weird. And then letter D, of the 3 copies of the press release Frank Colomb had written and sent to the director, one was then given to the commissioner by him, and
A Fields has it in the comments.
Yep, A Fields just popped out another ambiguous pronoun. Dan, thank you for writing out the whole thing I was just about to say. Those are all good answers. So the clearest one is by far letter B. All right, so paragraph organization, second type of question. This one is a little less ambiguous, I feel like, for most people. Sometimes there are 2 answer choices that are kind of okay, but a lot of times there's one clear reason why the sentences need to go in the order they go in. So we have, I see B could be misinterpreted. It seems like it could be stating the press release was written to the director. We don't actually know that is the case. I think it's clear enough because sent being a verb that takes a indirect object, so he sent them to somebody. Otherwise, I wouldn't know who he sent them to and who gave the copies. I think it's clear enough. And out of all of the choices, it's the least bad. So thanks for pointing out that it could be even clearer if we rearrange things a bit, Amy. That's what I said. These questions often don't have a perfect answer. So for paragraph organization, the basic strategies, and I kind of distilled some things down here. We're going to identify what I call the question marks in sentences, or the red flags. So these question marks are things like pronouns, abbreviations, or the X without enough detail to understand. So if the example would be if I just started a whole new paragraph and I just said something like, the train was the largest in the world and the fastest. You wouldn't know what train I'm talking about. You would say, what train? So any of those things that make you question what's going on with a question mark, we're going to identify those. We're going to find the topic sentence, because the topic sentence can't have any of those question marks if it's introducing us to something. Underline keywords and phrases. Look for strong connectors. As a last strategy, you can let the answer choices help you. Once you see what the answer choices are, there will be obviously only 4 answer choices to choose from, and that's a lot better than the 5 times 4 times 3, 120 different options you can do when you mix 4 different sentences around. So let the answer choices help you. 5 sentences, sorry. They're mostly 5 sentences. So first we're going to do a demonstration. I'm going to go through this example the way I would mark it up on my test and the way I would come to the correct answer. Obviously in the test you would have A, B, C, and D to choose from, but I hope that I did all these, I'm crossing my fingers, I hope that I did all these transitions properly for this to mark itself up as I go. And we'll see how that goes. So put these sentences about Empire Plaza in the best order. First one says, the massive undertaking. And I'm going to be using a standard set of notations here on this slide. So anything that is a question mark for me, I'm going to put in a box that is kind of light red with a gray straight border. Anything that's answering a question is going to be in a box that's kind of a light green with a sketchy looking blue border. And any other notes don't have a border at all, and they have a yellow background, and they're in italics. So the very first couple words, when I start reading, it says the massive undertaking. And I say, I don't know what massive undertaking you're talking about. So I highlight that, the massive undertaking, with a question mark flag. Obviously on the test, you're not going to have like 12 different types of highlighters. I don't think they usually even allow highlighters. It depends on your proctor, but you can just use your pencil and circle these things. The next thing I would say is, as we're reading the next sentence, we're getting into a lot of details. So I just put a little note. These are a lot of details. And then it leading to the popular joke that the governor had an edifice complex, though not all commentators were so waggish. Now, this is a lot of weird words smashed together, but what I get from this part is that they're probably going to tell me more about commentators that felt a different way. Oh, sorry. I forgot my flag about the governor. The governor. I don't know which governor they're talking about. So this is going to be some sort of a transition. I'm going to look for an example of what the commentators are talking about. Number 2. I have another red flag with the governor. I don't know which governor we're talking about yet. And he remarked, there's no question that the city did not look as I think the princess thought it was going to. So there's 2 more. The city, what city are we talking about? And the princess. The number 3 I get to. And I finally have some answers. I have that Governor Nelson A. Rockefeller formulated his plans to build what is now Empire Plaza in the wake of a diplomatic visit to Albany by Princess Beatrix of the Netherlands that highlighted the dilapidated condition of much of the city. So now I've got some really nice answers to some of my questions. I'm going to keep going through all of these, though, just to mark up the question marks and to try to see how they fit together. So for number 4, I have one biographer. That's a keyword. It's a question mark. If the sentence was by itself, and you didn't already know that it was Rockefeller, you would be like, whose biographer? Who are we talking about here? Number 5 has a very clear question mark word, his. Any pronoun is going to be some sort of a question mark word. And I'm noting that as this sentence goes on, his attempt to improve the city's looks, however, met with a great deal of criticism due in large part to the effort's gargantuan scope and budget. As the sentence goes on, it's very general. It's introducing an idea that there's a lot of criticism, or the scope or something. There's probably going to be some more information later in the paragraph about the scope or the criticism. So I made myself a little note. So once I've kind of gone through and marked everything up like that, I am going to start marking up how do I get to the answer now that I've got all these things. So the first thing I'm going to do is identify that topic sentence. And that's very easy in this case. There's only one that has no red flag words in it. And that is the TS in the side here that I just put in that sentence 3. So we're going to take sentence 3 and pop that down as our first sentence in the answer choice. The next thing I'm going to look for is really strong links between different words and especially things like the answers to the questions or those yellow notes that I had taken. So the second thing I see as I'm reading is that princess only shows up twice. And I probably don't want to start talking about the princess in sentence 1 and then go on and on and on and on and on, and then finally mention the princess again at the end. It's probably not going to be something people remember that much. It's also really linking in the governor, the city, the princess to sentence 3. So because of that really strong link, sentence 3 goes to sentence 2 very nicely. Now I look for other really strong links. The next really strong link I see is about the general scope and budget, the general scope part on 5 up to the details on 1. I don't know yet though whether that goes next or whether that's going to be a little bit further down the paragraph. So I'm just going to write that 5 to 1 link off to the side, and I'll worry about mashing it in later where it goes. So now if I had answer choices A, B, C, D to look at here, I would look for one that starts with 3, then goes to 2, and one that has 5 and 1 in that order. In this case, there is one more pretty good link, which is that last note that we had taken where we were looking for an example of a commentator. So the commentator and the biographer link together, which means that we're going to go from 1 to 4, and I can kind of collapse down to just have a nice straightforward answer. 3, 2, 5, 1, 4 would be the correct answer to this question. Now, this question was engineered to demonstrate some of these topics. I found some civil service questions to help us get some practice with real civil service things. And we will go to those now. I see one question in the chat about, is it not best to start with the answers and not starting in the order given? They're in the wrong order. Is it not best to eliminate from the answers, then apply said stratagem? You can start from the answer choices and just try them all out and eliminate things that don't work. I find that it's much easier to look through these quickly and try to find the strongest links and go from there to the answers, because I can convince I call it the dessert menu principle. I can convince myself that almost every answer is correct if I'm looking at them. It's like when you have a dessert menu, every dessert looks good. But if I just asked you without a menu, hey, what dessert do you want? You might be able to say, oh, I want brownies. But then when I give you the menu and you're like, oh, but there's cheesecake and there's cookies and there's double, triple chocolate fudge, it can lead some people astray to have all the different answer choices in front of them. So I like to start this way personally. All right, sample questions. So this is more of the format that you would see. You have your questions, and then you have your answer choices, and you have to choose which of the following is the best arrangement of the sentences. So just like we did before, sample question 1, and I will put up a poll if you want to answer it with what you think the correct answer is.
Are you planning an intermission at any point?
Yes, intermission will be right after these sample questions. There are 3 samples. Yes, these do take a bit longer. I just posted a weird sentence to chat instead of to the poll.
Can't delete it for us.
It's okay, I'll delete it. I'm going to give a few minutes and then I'll be back.
gonna vote crunch on the snack.
All right, captioning back on, mic back on. Enough votes to end the poll. I see almost everybody chose letter D. Letter D, as in donut, is the correct answer. And I drew on this one some of the good links between things that helped me to figure that out. So this information was a red flag word or question mark, and the interest, goals, and abilities, and the imagining thing was the information. So 3 then 1 was one thing I was looking for. And actually, none of the other ones had that. The other thing that I was looking for was people thinking about several possibilities and then going to the imagining. So thinking about it and then imagining it, because it was, again, general and then details. So when you're writing a paragraph for clarity's sake and for civil service sake, you want to generally go from very general statements and then you get more detailed as you go. So you want to start off with something that's way more top level, and then you get down into the nitty gritties. Oh, I forgot I did mark this up entirely. There we go. There's all the markup, I think. Yes. So they, this information, a choice about what. That was more detailed, that they're thinking about several possibilities. And then it was more general, that it's just an important decision. Oh, I did want to point that out, that eventually word. So transition words can be important too. Eventually is mostly going to be a kind of a final sort of a word, right? Eventually, the end came. So if you see something like first, do this, second, do that, obviously those are pretty good indicators of where those sentences belong. Okay, this one's a bit longer, and it's about phosphates. And I think this one's a little bit more indicative of the type of question you might expect to see, because it has the 5 answer choices, which I feel like is more common in general. And Southpaw Hare pointed out, if you look at the possible answers first, you can narrow down what the topic sentence might be. So in this case, all the answer choices start with either 1 or 3. So you know the topic sentence is either going to be 1 or 3. And I will post the new poll for us.
I finished off your veggie straws.
I tried to put up a poll. I don't think it... Oh, there it is.
Oh, it's there.
Whew. Took a while.
Yeah, it does. There's a lag.
Thank you for the reminder for people, Jay. Yes, please don't post the answers in the chat. Some people take longer to find an answer than others. And if you post the answer, they don't get a chance to try to do it on their own. So if you want to guess the answer before I tell you what the answer is, you can either answer it in the poll or just, write it down at home and you'll know whether you got it or not. Okay, looks like we got a lot of answer choices, so I'm going to end the poll and go over this question. The correct answer is letter C, and I can tell from the poll answers that that was a harder question. I'll go over it in just a second, but I did want to make a note about hard questions versus easy questions on the test. The way civil service tests are graded, every question is worth the same points in a section, in any given section. So there are expected 15 questions in the preparing written material section, and every one of those questions is worth 1/15 of the score for preparing written material. So the harder ones, like this one about phosphates, if it were something like this were on there, I mean, this one probably isn't because this is an official sample question from civil service, but the harder ones like this phosphate question are balanced out by easier ones like the one about the job, different types of jobs, and they're worth the same points. So if you're really stuck on one, please, again, choose an answer choice that you like, whatever your favorite letter is, and go on, because you really want to make sure you get to all the questions in the test and you give yourself the best chance of getting all the easy ones right at least, and then come back and do some of the harder ones. All right, for this question though, let's talk a little bit about why C is the correct answer. So phosphates damage the environment through a complex chain of events is the better topic sentence if I have 3 and 1 to choose from. So if I say phosphates damage the environment through a complex chain of events, and then I explain what that chain of events kind of is, that the phosphates are carried to the sewage systems, to local rivers and streams, to large bodies of water, that is a much clearer way to start my paragraph. Remember, I said go from general to more specific. So you see that letter B, for example, starts with number 1 and ends with number 3. That is a very common way of writing in general, to kind of do a conclusion wrap-up sentence. But when you only have a couple sentences going, having a conclusion sentence is kind of a luxury that we don't have a lot. So 3 is the better introduction to this topic. If you pretend you know nothing about what's going on with this topic and somebody just goes right in with sentence 1, you're probably going to just nope right out of there because it's kind of a boring, too detailed sentence. Sentence 3 is a much better introduction to this topic. And then sentence 1 gives us a little more context about it. Sentence 4 is the sentence that mentions algae, and sentence 2 also mentions algae. So those two probably go together, right? With sentence 2, I have a question mark word or phrase where it says the algae absorb much of the available oxygen that's necessary to sustain marine life. I don't know what algae you're talking about yet when I go to sentence 2. So because sentence 4 explains that, 4 then 2 is a very strong link. And you see that it's actually such a strong link that it's in all of the different answer choices for you. That 4 goes to 2 because they're the only 2 that mention the algae. And then 5 works well at the end because it is summing up the results, right? So 4 tells us about the algae, 2 tells us what the algae are doing, and you see it says that is necessary to sustain marine life. So if it was necessary to sustain marine life, then 5, it results in death when they don't have enough of that oxygen. So the whole match between sustaining the life and then resulting in the death is 2 then 5. Again, a good match. So out of the 2 options, one thing that can help with choosing between them as well is if you look at C and D, if you figure out that number 3 should be your topic and look at C and D, and you just have to choose between them, looking at how they're different can help you to choose as well. So if you look at C and D and you say, okay, number 1 is in a different spot between those 2. They both have 4, then 2, and then sometime later 5, but number 1 is in a different spot. So reading through and trying to find the link to determine where number 1 goes is the best way to answer that. One other reason I like number 1 near the beginning, but not the first sentence, is because it's kind of explaining what phosphates are before we go into more about phosphates, et cetera, et cetera. Like, they're in detergents, and then they get into the sewage systems, and then they get into the water. So it gives us the very clear this, then this, then this that we want. Okay, last one before we take a break. This one has actually got the word computer in it, so it's nice and IT focused. And again, this is from the Civil Service official samples from the Department of Civil Service. Okay, much clearer results that time. I muted myself again. I really need like a big red light that shows whether I'm muted or not muted. Maybe that's what the goal should be for. Sarah will buy herself a big red light. The correct answer to this one is letter D. 3, then 5, then 4, then 1, then 2. And I will go over this. So one of the things that I find most useful in this question is figuring out what all the its mean. Right? So number 2 has an it in it. Just how profound an effect it is having on society is as yet to be determined. Number 4, although it is possible to conceive, it is not possible to experience it. That one is more of a conceptual it, right? Although it is possible, like it's possible. So that one's not referring to any specific, is the audio really not on? I see one person saying there's no audio. Oh, no, it is. Okay. Thank you, sir. So the it in number 5 actually refers to a something though, right? Number 4, the it is more of just a little filler word. It's a conceptual it. So number 5, the it is it works in a time frame, so that's referring to something as well. So the key for numbers 5 and 2 is determining what those its are referring to so that you know what they're supposed to match up with. And if you look at number 5, where it says it works in a time frame in which the nanosecond, a billionth of a second, is the primary measurement, what's the it that it's talking about there? Well, it's talking about the computer, right? So because 5 is talking about the computer, it needs to be as close as possible to the words the computer. Okay? So 5 says it works in a time frame in which the nanosecond is the primary measurement. We need to put that next to the words the computer somehow, which is why 3 then 5 is a better example, a better pairing. Okay? If I go to number 2 instead first, and I say the computer's accelerated our sense of time beyond anything we've experienced before. Just how profound an effect it's having on society is yet to be determined. The it in number 2 is the acceleration of our sense of time, right? If I kind of anchor in people's minds that it means the sense of time, and then I try to go back and say, no, it means the computer. And then I go back again to talking about the time, makes the sentences a lot more jolting for the reader. So when I'm talking about the computer, I want to make sure I keep talking about the computer and then go on from there. The other thing that clues in number 2 towards being later in this paragraph is that it's talking about an effect of something. When we haven't even talked about what the thing is that much yet, to talk about the effect is again a little premature. So it's better for us to spend more time talking about this thing that we're trying to explain for a while, and then mention it's having some sort of an effect. Maybe I'll go into more effect in the next paragraph. I see some comments from Southpaw Hair that it could be a style choice to put 2 earlier. Yes, the author could be trying to make a point about societal change and could be doing this and the other, but you can't try to assign purpose to these beyond what is the clearest way to reorder these sentences into a paragraph. So if it ends up being something like, well, you could do this to emphasize it as a style choice, it's not going to be the best answer usually. It's the same thing with the supervision questions that people have a lot of trouble with. So like, well, it could be the right answer to do this thing. Yeah, but most of the time it's not going to. So it is much better for us to keep our pronouns next to the nouns they're talking about as close as possible. And that means that number 5, where the it is talking about the computer, has to be next to the computer in number 3. Number 2 can come much later because we spend a lot of time talking about how time is being measured differently and things like that. So that it can happen later on. All right, so that is the preparing written material topic. Next topic is going to be logical reasoning using flowcharts. We are going to take a break though, and I'm gonna say like 6 minutes at least, so that I can get these slides, the handout with the flowchart questions posted in the description, posted in the chat for you guys to download if you want to. If you want to follow along on like a paper or whatever. So I will be doing that, and we'll see you in a little bit. right, welcome back for Flowchart Palooza. Can somebody just confirm that audio is good? Thank you. I just heard it, so. I see one more question. Thank you, Dan. Can we list what's going to be on the exam? All right, I'll list the exam topics one more time here. Exam topics. Systems analysis. Preparing written material that we just went over. Flowcharts. And then manual. Procedural manual, I'll call it. There's a post on the NYS-ITS site that has the link to what the topics are. It's on the civil service exam announcement as well. That's actually the only official source for that material. So, I mean, I can copy paste, but you don't have to take my word for it. You can go on the civil service site and look it up. I felt like reading Rainbow there for a second. You don't have to take my word for it. Binary related questions. I don't think there's anything related to binary in the test. I can't think of where it would fit. Not systems analysis, not flowcharts. Yeah, I don't really think it's going to be a thing. Link to download the videos. I like to leave the videos on the streaming services so that I can update them if I need to and put descriptive information if I need to in the notes. Everything is on nysits.org. If you click study resources or click videos, it will take you to all the videos that exist. And we're going to go on with flowcharts now, though. I did pin the chat that I put with the new flowchart practice question PDF link. I also tried to put it in the description. Whether it refreshed on your particular device or not, I don't know. I will also be showing it on the screen here as we go. So that is something to look forward to. The first thing we're going to go over, though, for flowcharts is what the questions are testing for. The questions test for the ability to reason logically by solving problems involving given variables expressed in flowcharts and accompanying information. All information needed to answer the question is included within the flowcharts and the accompanying information. So there might be some sort of explanatory text that you should probably read before the flowchart. Prior knowledge of flowchart conventions is necessary to answer these questions. So this is one of the only, well, it's the only topic in this particular exam. It's one of the rarer civil service topics where you do need to bring in outside knowledge with you about some specific thing. So we're going to talk about flowchart conventions first, very briefly, just the ones that you kind of need to know. And then we'll do some sample, talk about how to organize yourself, set things up, and do some sample problems. So flowchart conventions, a couple symbols that we need to know. First, we need to know what this little pillbox symbol is. And that one is actually called a terminator symbol. Usually it's used for like start and end, right? The terminal ends of the program. But maybe it could be a terminator too, like a robot. The next shape we need is the flow arrow, which just tells us which way to go once we're done with a box or an object. So after we have a flow arrow and our terminators, we can actually make the world's simplest flowchart. Start, arrow, end. A+. If everything were that easy, no one would have any questions about flowcharts in this exam. But obviously they do get a little bit more complicated. The next shape we need is a rectangle. The rectangle shape is used for processes. Sometimes you might see it with two little bars on the sides. That means generally like a sub-process or some sort of a function or routine. But anything that's like a rectangle shape is some sort of a process. Then we have a diamond shape. Diamond shapes are for decisions. And usually they have only 2 options coming out of them. I have seen sometimes where people make a diamond decision that has like a weird claw thing on the bottom of it with lots of different choices for you to make. Kind of like a switch statement or a case statement in a programming language instead of an if-then. But usually decisions have just option 1 and option 2 poking out of them. The little parallelogram, it's not a rhombus. I've been told that rhombuses are menacing. This one is a parallelogram because the sides are not equal length. The parallelogram is for input or output. And a circle is used as a connector. So pages are only so big, and sometimes flowcharts go onto multiple pages. So the little connector dots let you know how to connect things together when a flowchart has to flow onto more than one page. Or sometimes there's like a really chunky subroutine that happens if you go off one branch of a decision. So sometimes it's better to put a connector there and then put the subroutine information off to the side. And there's a gabillion more shapes. You can just Google flowchart shapes, and I left you a link here about some flowchart shapes. The ones I just went over are really the only ones I would expect to see. You might see the one that looks like a rectangle with a wavy bottom, but I don't think I've even really seen that one in my memory, because people just usually write print whatever instead of the little wavy bottom one, because the little wavy bottom one means output of some sort that's usually like printed to a paper, because it's supposed to look like a little torn off sheet of paper. So these are your big ones: terminator, start end, rectangle for processor task, diamond for decision, and then the arrows to show you the sequence they go in. So how do we deal with the flowcharts? First of all, read the instructions. As I was reading the civil service topic explanation at the very beginning of this, I did say sometimes there is extra information in the instructions that will help you to answer the question. Second, you will get scratch paper. You'll bring your pencils or whatever. You will get scratch paper, but it is to your benefit to work as neatly as possible in your scratch paper. Especially if you're setting up loops and iterations and trying to go through step by step on a flowchart. Working neatly is going to let you kind of retrace your work instead of just having a couple scribbles off to the side in an angle that means that it's question 5. Labeling the questions and working as neatly as you can helps. They will give you as much scrap paper as you need, but you do need to turn it all back in. They all get numbered. So this is like scrap paper 1 of 4 or whatever. And they all have to be turned back in at the end. But work neatly, and you will thank yourself for it. Third thing is that a lot of flowcharts have iterations or loops that happen. So as you're going through, set up your iterations on your chart, on your notes in some sort of like a table usually, to keep track of what's going on. And you want to look for, are there any patterns to what's going on with these iterations? Are there any jumps or ways to get out of this loop? Like, how do I break out? How do I go to somewhere different? And you always also want to check the last iteration of something, because usually things happen a little weird in the last iteration of something. So especially for what's called the fence post problem. So if I told you to iterate from 1 to 5, like y equals 1 to y equals 5, then as you start going through that, you might have it written in a flowchart as, okay, y equals 1 at the top, and then a decision diamond that said, is y less than 5? And then if yes, add 1 to y and go back and do it again. If no, then exit the program. But even just saying that to you right now without writing it down, I'm kind of questioning whether it should have been less than or equal to if I want to go from 1 to 5, and what the value of y will be at the end. Because maybe, depending on when I'm checking what the value is, maybe it's already been iterated one more and the value of y will be 6, even though I'm only repeating this loop for y is 1 through 5. So just be careful about the last iteration is what I'm saying here. And I'm going to show you an example question 1 here, and then we're going to go over to the new PDF that I made for us. This question is one that you've probably seen before. It's the sample question I was using before, but I have a brand, like I said, I have a brand new PDF for you guys with brand new sample questions. So this one shows you a start and a stop and has 3 questions. Please, again, don't post answers in the chat. And also please note that even though these are open-ended questions, your test will all be multiple choice questions. So I like to leave this one a little bit open-ended though, because you don't often use the answer choices to help you guide your answers in these flowchart questions. You're generally going to work through the flow to try to figure out the answer and then choose the one that matches what you got. So I'm going to just give you guys a few minutes to look at that, and then I will go over it. All right, welcome back. I'm going to ask again if my mic is good. Oh, there I am. Hi, me.
Yeah, your mic is good.
Thanks. And I'm going to switch this from... Oh, we're going to go over this one first. Sorry. I was trying to already switch us to the new thingy. The new questions. But we should probably go over this one first. So what are the values of A, B, and C at the beginning of this flow? In this question, the values of A, B, and I don't think I have the answers on the next slide, do I? No, okay, we're done. Did my slides go away from this? Yeah, okay. The values of A, B, and C at the beginning of the flow. Beginning of the flow meaning when you're at the start terminator. We don't know. That's what I wanted to just make sure that you're aware of. Will there be a question like that on the exam? Theoretically, there could be. And hopefully it would have the option to say not able to determine, right? Because they could be undefined. They could have been set in a previous program so that you know what they used to be. But yeah, you don't know what they are at the beginning of the flow at all. Let me see if I can bring this keynote down to my iPad. Nope. Okay, cool. Ready? Nope. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I can't. Hang on 1 second. I'm trying to find my markup that has these answers on it so that it's easier for you guys to see the answers, but I might not be able to find that. Oh, yes, there we are. Okay. Yeah, so they're uninitialized. They could be unknown, could be 0, or something random from previous processing. So the next question says, what are the values of A, B, and C at the end of the flow? So as you go through, you set up your iterations, and I'm going to show you what an example answer iteration thing might look like. As we look here. This is going to say flowchart question 2 on it because this used to be question 2. When I first did this example in 2014. The 2014 flowchart handout with the questions and answers should be linked below already in the description. But you can also check the NYSITS site for it. So it is linked in the description though, the old 2014 materials. Let me just pop the answer sheet up here. Kind of hard to be like my own studio as well, if that makes sense. So this is, it was, like I said, called flowchart question 2. So this is how I set up my iterations when I did this question earlier. Let's see if I can get both on the screen at once. That and that. Behind it. Behind it, please. Okay. So you can see here that I start off with the variables on the left and the iterations on the right, going across the columns. And I put spots in my variables for A, B, C, and then the test, which is that decision diamond where it says A greater than 10. Well, look at that, kind of. So that decision diamond where it says a greater than 10. So you can see if you go I0, that's the initial iteration. So you haven't looped it all yet. A is 0. That's what we set it to in the first process box there. B is 1, C is 2. And then you hit that decision diamond where it says A greater than 10. And you either can choose yes it is or no it isn't. And in this case, the test was a no. So now I labeled this, because this part where it literally looks like a loop, if you move these two boxes over, it would literally make a loop. That is the looping part. So this is called iteration 1 in my notes here. So A is going to be set to A plus B. So that's going to be 0 plus 1 is 1. B is going to be set to B plus C, which is 1 plus 2 is 3. Nothing happens to C, but I just rewrote it just in case. Just like you would if you would see if you were running a debugger. It would still tell you what the value of variable C was. So now I follow where letter Y connector is. You see in the little white bubble, there's a letter Y. So you go match that with the white bubble letter Y that goes back into our decision diamond. That says, hey, is A bigger than 10 now? And I say, nope, still not bigger than 10. So I go around to the next iteration and the next and the next. So as you go through, you can see that A at the end of this all is going to be 16, B is going to be 9, and C is going to be 2. Now the question 2-3, please don't look at that answer because it is not the right answer. 2-3 in the original question set was how many times does the decision point get evaluated? So the decision point gets evaluated 5 times. But if the question is the question that is on the PowerPoint now, how many times does the process A equals A plus B get executed? The answer is 4 times. So if you are freaking out that 2-3 says 5 times, please don't freak out. It was a different question. But that's from Flowchart Questions 2014. So there's a set of flowchart questions from 2014. Here, you know what? I'll just put that up now, actually. I'll put the whole set up for you to look at briefly. Let me just change which one's in here. Make this bigger. So this is the 2014 flowchart questions. So there's one about getting to work in the morning from CSEA, and there's a couple questions about that. And then there's one about the one that we just did, but again, slightly different questions. And then the next one in here is the one about the coins. Is this the one about the coins? No, this is a different one. Then there's one about coins, I think, at the end. That one's a pretty straightforward set. And then this is the one about the add a coin. So the add a coin one is a pretty complicated one. But the nice thing about these ones, which I know a lot of people have seen already, is that with the questions PDF, there's also this answers PDF. So the answers PDF has really detailed explanations as to what the answers are, why the answers are what they are. It shows you the iterations set up. It shows you what's going on with them. And there's all the answers to that one. So hopefully you will find that helpful. Now I'm going to put up a new window with our new questions. I'm seeing someone asking again how long you have to do this exam, and you'd have to ask civil service. I don't have that information, sorry. I'm not that sorry about it, actually. I shouldn't apologize for things that I'm not really sorry about. I'm going to hide that bit because that is just an ability thing. Okay. Looks like we're going to have a small weird gap, but that's okay. Okay. So I'm going to be looking down a lot as we're doing this because I put it on my iPad in front of me so that I can use my little pencil to write as we go. So please bear with if my head, you get to see the top of my head a lot. I'll make sure it looks pretty for you. I just labeled these with page numbers. So take that with a grain of salt, please. And am I enjoying notability? Go away. Oh wait, this is not the right. Sorry, I need to import the latest PDF that I made. So I edited it after I was in here. I thought I had it already, but I do not. This one, this one. Beautiful. So this should now match what you guys have. I'm going to make it as easy to read as I can, but still fitting mostly on one screen. It's the hardest part of flowcharts, really, is to get it mostly to fit on the screen. So our first question says, what's the value of count at the end of the flow that's given here? Which is hopefully all on screen right now. Great. So our first question, what's the value of count at the end of this flow? So set up your iterations. It's a very small flow. Set up your iterations and you can go through what the value of count is. Like I said, I like to do my iterations going across the columns, but other people do them other ways. So I have just written down the first little bit that I would write on my notes for this, I put count after P1 and then the test. And I also keep a little thing about the, about the output that's happening. And then I would go on through the iterations and loops. So I would say, okay, test was yes, Y1, iteration 1, I go back here, and I say the count gets updated to 2, and it's still less than 10. So I get another hello world. I use the ditto marks, the little dash dash, to mean the same thing again. And then that would keep going, right? Until count is greater than or equal to 10, right? So this would keep going da 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 until count got equal to 10, right? Once count is 10, I would get to is count less than 10, and I would say no, and I would go to the end, right? So I always like writing down that last iteration, like I said earlier, just because, again, if the count was incremented after the check, then it might be at a different number. So what's the value of count at the end of this flow? Does everyone agree with me that the count value should be 10? I hope so. There's nothing more stressful than doing like a live demonstration of a problem that hasn't really been vetted by anybody else yet, because I just went and got these questions earlier. So now the tricky part about how many times did hello world get printed? So if I went through and counted here, on iteration 1 was the first time I printed, right? At the start of iteration, I printed it out. So if I were setting this up and I had a little more room or a pencil on my scratch paper, I would probably take this and move it. Oops, that's too much moving. Undo. Undo. I would probably take this little print part here. I just want the print part, please. And I'd probably move it up where it belongs, which is up above the after P1 part. So if I had a pencil, I would erase and put it up there if I knew I needed to track it. So as I do the first iteration, the first thing I do is print, then I increment to 2, and then I go to yes, and then that'll keep going until the 10th, right? So now I just need to write down, so it'll print on the one where it gets set to 2, the one where it gets set to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the one where it gets set to 10. Right? And it'll print once at the beginning. So it does get print when the count is set to 1 as well. So that should print out 10 times as far as I can tell. I do see some people helping in the chat. Thank you. It does say that the value of count should be less than 10, not less than or equal to 10. So be careful about that. Be careful about the less than or equal to versus less than. Thank you everyone for helping to explain. It should only print hello the same 10 times, I think, as well. It does print on iteration 0, but there are only, if you're counting indexing start at iteration 0, there are only 9 iterations. Because at the start of iteration 9, count is 9, and then it prints hello world, and then it changes to 10, and then it stops. So it loops through this whole thing 10 times total. If you wouldn't get to iteration 10, you wouldn't loop back a 10th time. You only loop back 9 times. So you got the 0th iteration, and then you loop back 9 times. So you get a total of 10. 10 hello worlds. So that would be 10. And I will write up these answers a little bit more nicely and get them onto the, I'll post this really awful handwriting for now, but I will get the right answers up onto the site later as well. And I'm not going to go through all of these in detail today because I want to give you guys something to work on, that I don't just go over every little bit of it. But when you keep going down here, there's a question about, I just wanted to kind of show you what these questions are. And like I said, I'll be posting detailed answer sheets for you to work through to check your answers. Question 3 here is about the Smith family visiting a park. And there's a kind of complicated flowchart about how to calculate how much the family should pay. So the question is, if the family has 2 children, one aged 8 and one aged 10, their 2 parents and their grandfather, who is age 65, calculate how much the family should pay. So for this one, you kind of have to go through this loop for each one of those people and add up how much total the family should pay. But again, I don't want to just sit here going through flowcharts because it's boring. And it's something that people do at their own pace, and you'll get more out of it doing it on your own. But I will, like I said, post answers later for it. The page 3 question is about shipping costs. So it's kind of similar. It's a little easier version of the one with the how much does the family pay at the park. But it's about shipping costs. And I just gave a whole bunch of different weights for you to find costs for. Just to practice using the flowchart there. Question on page 4 is a flowchart about figuring out a triangle and applying the flowchart to finish whether it's scaling or isosceles or equilateral. And I don't think they would do this to you, but if you know what isosceles, scaling, and equilateral are, and it somehow is wrong in the test, it doesn't matter. Just do what the flowchart says. Okay? That would probably be a question they'd throw out if they got an actual fact wrong. But they don't expect you to know the definitions of equilateral, isosceles, and scaling triangles. Just want to make that clear. And then the last one is the one that I was working on right before class started here. What I did was I took one of the old pseudocode questions. So there used to be a section on the test called pseudocode where they would give you like an actual snippet of a program that was written in a kind of pseudocode. And you had to answer questions about that pseudocode. So I just took one of those questions about pseudocode, which maybe you haven't seen if you've been doing flowcharts, because I think the last pseudocode was in maybe 2010. And I made it into a flowchart. It's not exactly the same as the pseudocode. The pseudocode was a little weird, but I made it into a flowchart, and it has all the same questions that the pseudocode had at the end here. Where it's got a whole bunch of questions about this particular flowchart. And like I said, I will post the answer to that as well.
Did you see they asked what kind of calculator they should bring?
The calculators is an interesting question. I don't think your exam announcement said anything about a calculator. Because you're not doing tabular this time. Usually you get the calculator for tabular reasoning. You should probably not need a calculator for the flowcharts, because it should be very straightforward, like addition or subtraction math, if there is any. As far as what kind of calculator, though, in my opinion, simpler is better. But like I said, I'm not entirely sure you'll even be allowed one. There is a copy of the Civil Service Calculator policy on the NYS ITS site. I got it from them a while back. And let me see if I can grab that for you to post in the chat here. So now we're into the Q&A section of this, by the way.
It says that they will be advised on their notice if they should bring a calculator.
That's possible. Yes, it does say that that is the policy. Candidates will be advised on their admission notice whether or not calculators are permitted. So,
yeah.
There is the link to calculator policy. Sorry. And let me just double check some of the other chat that was going on before I looked back up here. There was a lot of going back and forth about the 10 versus 11 thing. The link that I have pinned to the top is the new practice questions PDF. In the description of this stream, there should be the link to the old questions. Let me double check if it's in there. Previous flowcharting study resources. Yes. I will make sure I get those 2014 questions and answers to you guys as well, if they're not already up on the site. So the 2014 set and the 2022 set will be available for you. A lot of chat about the 10 versus 9.
Ben has a question, if you noticed.
Yep, I'm getting there. Hang on.
Okay.
I did see, yes. So if you are familiar with computer science programming type terminology, it's like the difference between a for loop versus a while loop when the things are evaluated, when the exit condition is evaluated. That's what we were getting kind of tripped up on in the example that we went over there with the hello world printing. So as long as you kind of make just a nice little scratch paper setup where you can see what you're working on, then however you do it is just fine. And honestly, with 10 iterations at most for that one, you could really just write down all the iterations, and then you wouldn't have questions about it, right? If it said 100 iterations, maybe please don't spend time writing that down in the test, because you got other questions to get to. And I did see that Ben wanted to go over how to build that iteration table. So I can definitely do that, Ben. I will bring my notepad back up here and I'll show you exactly how I would do it on scratch paper on a completely blank page.
And this is the last thing you plan to do today, correct? And
this is the end thing for today. The other thing is there is on my channel a playlist that has all of the study sessions on it. So somebody was asking, where can you find the link for system analysis? The playlist has all the study sessions, and I will be reposting the links in the nysits.org page as well. Flowchart info will be posted both in the description here, probably in a pinned comment on the YouTube, and on nysits.org. But give me until the end of the weekend to get that out, please. And then next week we will be going over the procedural manual exam topic, as well as any final questions you have. And if we have time, we will go over how the post-exam works as well, which is like how long does it take to get scores, what's going on with the survey thing, the selective certification, the ELMS process, or if you want to wait and we can do that a couple of weeks after the exam, we could do that too. But definitely I will stay and show the whole process of creating that scratch paper, and then we will say goodnight. Good afternoon, actually. It's not night yet. It just looks all gray outside. I gotta switch back to...
I do have a quick question. I didn't see v_temp2 defined for the last flowchart example. Did I miss something?
It is on the screen right now. I'm gonna highlight it for you. It is right here. That's where vtemp2 is defined. And the new flowchart questions will have answers in a separate PDF. That is correct. I like to keep them separate because then you can work on them and then check your answers later. Did I get your question answered there? The person, no, Shoal, who didn't find the vtemp2. Okay, I think I got everybody. If I didn't, you can ask it again. It's okay. I won't be upset. Let's make a new document entirely here. New document. New document. There it is. All right, brand new page. So if I were doing the first example in our flowchart practice, okay, and I can't have my scratch paper up and the flowchart up, so I'm gonna need you guys to either, oh wait, maybe I can, hang on, maybe I can get this screen up. Let's do no, not gonna work. Okay, cool. Maybe I can't do it. I'm not gonna try too hard to do it. Preview. Preview. I want to get to the like actual content of this whole thing right now. The reason why I'm bothering to. This is gonna be should be that one. Oh, it's hidden. That's why I can't see it. Okay. Anyway, here's the little flowchart. It's very little right now. All right, there's my test flowchart. It's above my head. If you can't quite see it, it's on the handout, but we'll pretend that that's my test booklet, and then this is my scrap paper that I'm working on right now. I'm gonna just label. First I label. I always like to label because let me drop these. There we go. I always like to label because then I'll go back to it and I'll know which one I was working on. So that's page 1. Let's see if I can make this a smaller. See if I can. Yeah, it's a little better. And the first thing I would do when I set up a flowchart iteration table would be to literally start at the beginning of the flowchart. If you're brand new to this, literally just write the word start to tell you that's the beginning of the flowchart. And then every operation that either sets something or prints something or tests something, make a line for as you're going down. So I would say start, and then I would say count equals 0. And you can also just label the number the statements on the flowchart and then put the numbers here, or letter them and then put the letters here. So like maybe I would say start is letter A and count 0 is letter B, and then this is letter C, but that gets confusing if you have letters. So I'm just going to rewrite them right now. So count is 0, and then we're going to have a print statement, and then we're going to have the count iteration. I'm just going to write it as count plus plus because that's a standard way of writing it in many programming languages. Then I'll have the test, the decision triangle, and then it might go back or it might go to the end. So this would be what I'd put on the left. And then going across, I would say, all right, I know I haven't looped it all yet, so I call this I0. So start does nothing, and it's never going to do anything. But when I see count equals 0, I know that the value of count at that point is going to be 0. Print means I'm going to print once, so I'm going to just put a dot there to count it for the future. And then count plus plus, I know means I'm adding 1 to the count, so I would make that a 1 now. And then I test, and my test condition was, is the count less than 10? And my answer is, yes, it is. So yes means I go to the next iteration. And now I don't even have this one or this one. These ones don't even happen once I'm in the iterations, right? So I might put a line there to let myself know that these were just initialization sort of things. The iterations start with a print, and then you increment, and then you check whether we're less than 10 still. And we can keep going through all the iterations. You don't really need to number them at the top if you don't want to. But if you see a pattern, you can also always just stop, right? And I can say, oh, I see a pattern, and then just dot, 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 and make my way to the last one. So it's not that long for me to write them all out, though. And then 10's right here. And then my test finally fails, so now I have to go to the end, right? So now when I start this, or when I go to look at my questions and it says, what's the value of count at the end of the flow? All I have to do is come to my screen here. I'm going to use a highlighter to show you and look at what the value is at the end of the flow, the last thing I set it to. And then when it asks me how many times does hello world get printed, I made these print dots so that I could count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times that it got printed. So I hope that clears it up a little bit for you. I think Ben was the one that asked that. So that is the way that I would set that one up. I see one more question here from Shul. If vtemp2 equals vtemp2 plus vtemp, what's the original value of vtemp2 that we're adding to vtemp? You would just assume that it's 0, initialized to 0. It should probably be stated in the question if it's actually on the test like that, but it would be initialized to 0. About calculators. My favorite calculator to use for exams is the TI-30X2S. It is a 2-line display, simple scientific calculator. That shows you what you typed and what the answer is, but it's not so complicated that you end up with a calculator that's way smarter than you are that you can't use, like some of the TI-83s you can get yourself into trouble with if you haven't played with them for a while. But it still shows you what you typed and what the result is. So that is, it's a good one. If you ask Freeperform, they don't sponsor me. Hashtag not sponsored. Hit me up, TI. No, I'm kidding. I don't. It's called the TI-30X2S. I'll just post a link in chat if you want to see what it looks like. Again, it's not like.
I put the title in chat.
Here's a link to it on Amazon. I like it because it has the 2-line display. It's actually spelled with a Roman numeral 2. Not even an affiliate link. Look at that. Just giving Bezos money. Alright, I think we've gone way over because I think I took longer than I meant to on some of the preparing stuff preparing written material stuff when I redid that, so oh well. But thanks guys. See you next week if you want to come back. Otherwise, good luck on the exam. And if you have further questions, you can reach me via email, Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at nysits.org or sarah@tonertutoring.com. And I will see y'all next week. Nor exam what said want X value when leaving X the conditions. I don't know what you're asking quite, Nor, but it would be when leaving the condition. It would be whenever you exit. Like, you don't necessarily finish every loop. If there's a thing that says, you know, there's a test in the middle of the loop that says, like, is y greater than 10, and it breaks out of the loop, then it breaks out of the loop and you don't finish that loop. So just follow the flow. Go with the flow. Sarah Lajeunesse just posted the email addresses in the chat for you. And I'm going to sign off because this gets weird if I stay here too long. Thanks, everybody. Bye.